Hello everybody. So we are in the greenhouse today and we're going to do a vlog style of video today. This kind of framing here you've probably not seen for a while because of the curtain that was there and isn't there anymore. So what I'm going to do is just kind of demonstrate to you before we get into the ins and outs of what we're going to go through today, how large the greenhouse actually seems and appears now that I have removed the curtain, removed the warm side. Of course, we have the hothouse in the garden, which I will take you to in the second part of this video. And as I kind of retreat into the dark recesses of the greenhouse, that's about as far as we go, way back here. So that is 14 feet long, which is, you know, it's big as in terms of a greenhouse. It's fairly big. I know they're much bigger, but it's fairly big. And I've got loads of space now. And I have to say, it's made a huge difference. And yeah, okay, it was self-inflicted. I decided to put the curtain up, and the only reason for that is because I wanted to grow warm growing plants as well as the cooler growing plants. They're all tropical plants in here, but the ones that were in this side and now will be in the whole entire greenhouse were the kinds of plants that really didn't want to go much below 12 degrees Celsius. I've got one or two that will go lower than that, but none of them will cope with frost, that's for sure. What we have now is an entire space where I can actually focus on like one specific kind of plant. Now, I'm not talking about focusing on a particular family or genera. I'm just talking about cool growing plants as opposed to warm growing plants. So the plants that's over in the hothouse now, I am increasingly referring to those as house plants. And the reason for that, it's not that they're any different to what I was growing before, it's because the YouTube community seems to think of them as houseplants, but really they're just the tropical plants, aren't they? They're just tropical plants. They grow in the wild. Okay, there's lots of hybrids, but they grow, the species that they come from grow in the wild, in the tropics, and we bring them into our houses in the temperate climate. So if I then go and title a video tropical plants, people don't necessarily equate the two. And I've actually had people say to me, well, yeah, I grow houseplants. I can't grow those tropical plants you have in your greenhouse, as if they're somehow different. And in actual fact, a lot of these plants in the cooler side will also grow in a house, not necessarily in the warmest rooms of the house where it's constantly 18 degrees to 24 degrees, but they will grow in a lot of the cooler rooms. I have loads of rooms that I can grow cyclamen that like to go down to about 15 degrees Celsius. I have plenty of rooms that will go down to 12. I've got a little downstairs room where it's at 12 degrees Celsius, you know, most of the winter, all through the winter. So yeah, there are plants that are in here now that will grow in the house. So they're all house plants. If you look at it that way, they're all tropical plants, they're all house plants. So what are we going to do today? So we're going to have a little look in the hothouse, we're going to have a little look in here and a chat about the differences and why I've titled this New Beginnings, because it does really feel like new beginnings for me. So I'll turn you around so you can have a look at what's going on. We'll look at some of the plants as well, and we'll just have a general chit chat. So let's get cracking. And we are in. Okay, so you can see what a difference it makes not having that curtain there. It really does give you like a completely different perspective. And I've noticed that in terms of working and culture, it's way better. It's completely changed everything. I didn't realise how difficult it was for me previously to actually do things culturally, to care for these plants. And a lot of them were not really being cared for to the degree that I wanted to care for them. I was leaving a lot of them. They were all kind of squished together, and I was convincing myself that they didn't need much doing because it was winter. But when you actually give yourself a bit of space and a little bit of freedom to move around and roam, then you can really get into the nitty-gritty of these plants and really look close up to them and see where you're going wrong. And in my case, I was going wrong rather a lot, which I'll come to in a moment. So it's made a huge difference. I have moved one or two things around. Some of the things have gone over into the hothouse, but I'm giving myself more space. So let's discuss the kind of things that I've been doing. So first of all, we'll start with this Bougainvillea, which those of you who are frequent viewers to my channel will have noticed that it is no longer over there. And by the way, you can see my Dendrobium, I think it's delicatum, is about to bloom. It missed an entire year out, but it's about to bloom again. So I have actually got you on about half zoom at the moment, just so you can see a little bit far out. So at some point I might have to stop it and zoom back in again to like the normal view. It just gives you a better kind of panoramic view of what's going on, but of course it's no good for close-ups. So let's move over to where it is now. It's now on the gable end underneath the very famous mandevilla. It's famous for me at the moment because so many people mention how nice it looks, even though we're in the depths of winter now. So anyway, let's get back to what I was talking about. The Bougainvillea. Now you can see it's looking pretty good considering that we're in the middle of winter. I cut it right down at the end of autumn, like right down to, where were we? About there at the end of autumn. I cut out, there was loads of kind of side shoots zooming off in different directions. So I've cut it right down to there and it's got loads of new growth on. It's not been without leaves this year, and this is the first year it's not been without leaves. Now I put that down to the light. When I've been doing different experiments with it, the most significant factor, to me anyway, appears to be the lack of light. So when I just move you back to where we were, sorry for all this moving about, I have added, and I added this a few months back, an extra light along there. It's an LED light, you can just see it there. I've switched it off because it flickers, but that, just by adding that light, that seems to have made the difference with the Bougainvillea that was growing up there. I think that's why it's not dropped its leaves. That appears to be the only reason. That's the only change, so that should be the only reason. The temperatures are the same. Obviously we've been through the worst of the dark days of winter. We've still got the worst of the weather, but in terms of the light, we're now into lengthening days. So it seems to me that the reason that it didn't drop its leaves was because it was being given a little bit of extra light. So I got my trusty light meter and I checked over there. I only did this morning, and the reading over there was 1/5. I'll just move you back very slowly. 1/5 of the reading over here. In other words, here it's 5 times brighter. Now you wouldn't expect that because the Mars Hydro light up there, which I'm not going to point at, is actually a lower model, a lesser model than the one I've got in the other side, or the other end of the greenhouse. Can't call it the cool side anymore, can I? What is the reason for that? Well, there's a couple of reasons. One, I've got a new grow light up there. That is obviously a big reason. But the other reason is that even if none of the grow lights are on, it's brighter over here. This is because the sun comes up on this side. It comes up over there. Now there are trees over there, there's all sorts of other things in the way, there's a fence and so on, but this area is still brighter because it's going to get the sun. On the other side of the greenhouse, obviously the sun's going down, it's going down towards the horizon at that end of the day. So I think it's going to make a difference having it over here. This is going to be the hottest side during the summer months. Bougainvillea love that, don't they? Think about where they grow in the Mediterranean. They love the warm temperatures, the really bright light. That's the theory. Let's see what happens. Now, unfortunately, it's going to clash a little bit with the mandevilla, but I think the pink bracts might go nicely with the red of the mandevilla, and I can always, there's space there to go sideways, isn't there? So there's going to be room. And obviously we've got the Nepenthes there, but they're not entwined in the mesh there, they're just loose, so I could move them anywhere. They'll be fine as they are. Okay, so that's one of the things that's happened that's really important. You might be able to see through there. You can see like the plastic on the other side. See how it's kind of moving about? That's because we're now in our third storm of the year. I think this is Franklin. So we've had Dudley, we've had Eunice, we're just in the middle of Franklin now. And my experiment with putting bubble wrap on the outside of the greenhouse, while it was successful in that it's really helped to lower the costs of heating, it just cannot stand up to these storms, and that's going to be an issue, isn't it? So I might have to remove that, but you try these things, you spend on it, you try it, and you fail. And in my case, you fail and you fail and you fail. But hopefully I'll learn from it and we'll move on. That's all part of the fun of growing these things. So I've kept wanting to show you this. I think I might have shown it in one of the videos, but we've got a plant here, Nepenthes, that has not only a slime trail there, I better come in on a night and have a look at that, but it has the 3 different types of pitchers. We've got uppers, intermediates and lowers, and you can see that by the colour of the pitcher is quite dark red there, and you've got a really dark peristome. Let's see if I can just zoom you back in again. Okay, we're back on the normal zoom. In other words, we're not zoomed at all. Okay, so this is a lower pitcher. You can see the dark body of it and the dark peristome, and then we've got one that is slightly more upperish in terms of it's got a little bit more green on it, a little bit more of an hourglass figure, and the peristome has a little bit of colour in it. Can you see the different colours in there? That's really nice. And then a little bit more upper still. So this one is even paler and it's a little bit smaller, and we've actually got the hook there, this little loop. Now you can always tell the upper pitchers because they always have a loop in them, and the lower ones, as you can see from that one, no loop whatsoever, just like a little bit of a kink. So we'll come back to this one. So you don't get like a lower pitcher and an upper pitcher, even though that's what's very often talked about. There is like a progression where they kind of go through this stage of producing pitchers which are in the middle before we eventually get to an upper pitcher. And here is very definitely, with a big loop in it, an upper pitcher, perfectly green compared to the others. I'll just show you the others down there. So you've got the lower there, bit more intermediate still. Definitely an upper, much smaller. Pity it's not yet popped. I may well do a video just on that, which should do fairly well in search because people are looking for upper and lower pitchers. So if you see that, if you spot that, you'll know what that is. You might say to yourself, I've already talked about this, but I'm going to wait for this to pop open and then I'll be able to do like a separate video on it. So, a few problems here. So we've got Phragmipedium Ainsworthii and we've got Phragmipedium Bessii. This one has just carried on blooming and blooming and blooming. This is the first time this one that Ed gave me hasn't bloomed, but problems for some reason. Leaves looking fairly dreadful, and I'm getting rot. Can you see like rot down in the base there? Now whether this has come from like water dripping into the crown, I'm not really any idea. I've no idea what's going on there. Ed assures me it's something to do with the temperatures, that they're perfectly happy down to 12 and lower. I've cut a lot of rotted bits off here, but like it was right down into the fan. It wasn't just like round the edge of a leaf. Now it does seem to have recovered a little bit. I'm not sure what's going on. Maybe I wasn't watering it enough. I know that is the case. I've just not watered some of these orchids enough because I've been frightened of the rot. Which brings me to another little point, which I'll talk about in a second. So yeah, I don't know what's happening with that one. Any ideas with these leaves? I will be very interested to know. Yeah, let's just move you around and we'll just talk about orchids for a second. Okay, so we did some work on talking about watering, didn't we? We talked about various watering techniques, and I was thinking that by watering them right through, they just weren't getting enough water where they needed it. Now, those of you who grow orchids, certainly in this country, will know that very often you get this kind of thing where you get the roots lower down kind of die off, and then you get new roots near the top, and simply by pouring water through, those roots at the top are not getting enough water, so you end up with an orchid which is beginning to desiccate even though you're watering it, and it just seems such an odd thing. But if you think about it, it's pretty obvious really, and it's pretty simple, that it's the roots at the top, the new roots right at the top of the pot, which are just not getting enough water. So I've taken to spraying. I'm now trying, and I mean, I've only come across this quite recently really as a way of dealing with this problem. I'm now trying to find those orchids, root them out, keep emptying these pots out to have a look where we're up to with them, and find out where those viable roots are. And if the viable roots are right near the top, then they really need spraying rather than dunking or watering in your traditional way where you pour water through. So being given more space like I have now, that's enabling me to do that better. So I'm really hoping to up my orchid game, because I must admit it is a little bit miserable, and the orchids that I've got on display are looking pretty dreadful. And I just put that down to lack of time making YouTube videos, lack of space to do it. Probably a little bit of a lack of an inclination because they're just not traditionally doing that well for me, so you tend to gravitate more towards those that grow better. But I'm not giving up on orchids. I will really try to make an effort to get to the bottom of these things. This Berry Oda is looking better. It did look absolutely awful. It's got some nice, fairly nice blooms if I hold it from a distance like that. There's plenty on there. I've actually cut rather a lot of the blooms off because they just looked awful. You can see, if you look right in there, can you see all these spots? Now I'm wondering whether that was because of the pot that I had it in. I had it in a really tiny pot. It was very, very compact. And again, this is another one that most of the roots are near the base of the pseudobulbs, the canes. So I really needed to spray the top to make sure that those roots were getting the water. I've also sprayed it with like a fungicide as well, and you know, around the edges, the newer leaves don't have all these black markings on them. So that remains to be seen whether that was the problem there. Same thing is going on with the Dendrobium farmeri. Roots are right near the top, or right near like the base of the canes. So I'm going to need to spray that to make sure that they get the water that they need. And hopefully we will avoid like saturating the rest of the pot, because this was the issue, wasn't it, when I said I was going to soak them. Some of them probably do need a soak, and they probably will need a soak when it comes round to the warmer temperatures, but of course at 12 degrees it can only lead to root rot, so you know that's the issue. I'm aware that there is a watering problem definitely in this greenhouse, and this is a big part and has been right the way from the beginning of my kind of orchid journey. So I'm hopefully on an evolutionary process with it, and hopefully the next stage where I can start to identify where the viable roots are and give those particular roots the water rather than just completely saturating the whole pot. I do have a couple of orchids out, so we've already mentioned the Berry Oda. I've got a Cambria over here. You know, it's not looking brilliant. I mean, you don't really want to look down at the pseudo bulbs, but again, this is another one where I was watering it, but the only viable roots near the top just weren't getting the water. I've had problems in the past with epidendrum. I know other people have. These are the kind of things that just seem to die a death at one point, and then they come back, and I have no idea why. They just do it. They come back again, and there's no rhyme or reason to it. But again, I'm wondering whether it's the root issue. The Dendrobium nobile has got loads of buds on it, so I've started giving that a bit of water now because of that reason. I've also, and I'll just move you slowly over here, I've also started giving some of my other Dendrobiums some water, just because we're at that time of year again. The light is beginning to improve, the day length is beginning to improve. I've not seen much new growth, but I have seen new roots. So the new roots, the green tips, I've just been giving them a little bit of a spray. So hopefully that'll stop them from desiccating too much, because I have left them, you know, I've left them since November. Same is true with that one over there, that one over there. I would really like to get into some Dendrobiums, so that's something that I'm going to look at as time goes on now that I've got the space, the place to do it. But I must make sure that they are cooler growing Dendrobiums. I don't want anything that's a warm growing one. So this is looking its absolute best now. So this is Tradescantia fluminensis Maiden's blush, looking really nice. I know it looks dreadful for the rest of the year, but it's got loads and loads of pink on it now. I did read an article, a really well researched article by a young lady, I think her name was Avery, and I might put the website in the description, a link to the website. A couple more over there looking all right. And she's basically researched this, and one of the major concerns or debates over Tradescantia Maiden's blush is that it looks very, very similar, if not identical, to another one called Tradescantia Blushing Bride. Anyway, cut a long, very long story short, I'm more or less convinced by all her arguments and all her research. She must have spent an awful long time doing this, and she's come to the conclusion that it was a mistake. It shouldn't be called Blushing Bride at all. That was referring to a completely different, like temperate variety of Tradescantia that dies down over winter and that has no pink whatsoever, and that it should be actually Maiden's Blush, and that this particular pink, it's not caused by a virus. It was actually genetically induced. I think they injected some kind of chemical to change one of the genes. So anyway, it's been induced by scientists. Scientists have actually created that, and there's a paper on it and everything. So there you go, and it does actually come from cooler temperatures. I kind of have a little bit of a caveat with that, because I'm not sure that it does come from cooler temperatures, because mine started, I mean this one, you know, it sat there all winter and it was at 18 degrees, 17, 18 degrees. So it can't be the cold that's induced it. I wonder whether it's the day length. Maybe it's a bit of both, I don't know. But, you know, I mean, these things, it doesn't really matter, does it? You can still enjoy it, whether or not you know where it comes from or whether or not you know what it's called. Okay, so you've seen my beautiful Masdevallias looking really nice. This is the second blooming for this. There are another few buds coming on it. I thought I was only going to get one rogue extra bloom. What else have we got? Loads going on with the Drosera, carnivorous plants, looking much better now, come back to life again, having been moved away from the big fan down there. There's still one there that's still in dormancy, but it'll come at some point. We've got beautiful Pinguicula there. We've got a couple more. I mean, I've ordered a load more begonias. I just couldn't resist. I ended up doing 2 orders in the end. What else have we got over here? So we've got the species Streptocarpus. This is Saxorum. It's got a couple more buds on it. It will, hopefully, when it settles, cover this entire plant. So there's quite a few buds on that now. You can see what they look like, but they are quite pretty. And I just like the different leaves, he says, as he knocks the one and only bloom off. Well, I'm sure you're quite used to that. See, there's an example of what I'm talking about. See, so we've got this. This is Adia aurantiaca, variety punctata. I think it's got another name. I can't remember what it is. So yeah, they produce these roots right near the top, don't they, the pseudo bulbs, and they don't typically get any water unless they spray. So I'm going to start spraying them. That's my New Year's resolution, starting in February. So we've got Brugmansia is going to bloom. That should be nice. Let me show you this. I've not shown you this for ages. This is a banana. Well, it's not really banana. It's a false banana, the Abyssinian banana. Now, would you believe, what have we got there? 1, 2, 3 leaves. Large leaves. Would you believe that that's been in there since October and it's not had 1 drop of water, not a single drop of water, and it's grown all those without any water. Now, I'm not watering it because I don't want it to grow. It's just about filling that space there, and I want to wait until we get past the last frost and then I can get it outside. Because obviously, you know, they grow very big very quickly. But I thought you'd like to see that. I mean, it's still a nice thing, even though it's kind of tucked away in the corner. I've no more space for it anywhere. So yeah, we've got all this space over here. I will start to put plants over here and move things over here. That space is sacrilege. That is going to stay as it is. I'll quickly show you a little bit on the Mandevilla. That's still looking pretty nice. I'm able to get to it now and get rid of this kind of thing. The dead blooms that get stuck, but fortunately it's plenty more coming, so that's looking all right. I'm a little bit worried that the reduction in temperature, this sudden reduction to 12 degrees, and it will start to take a hit. It hasn't so far, but then it's only been at 12 degrees for about a week. So I really, you know, crossing my fingers that it doesn't take a sudden jolt. Nepenthes all doing really well, producing tons and tons of pictures, lovely new pictures on all of these Nepenthes. I think this one is fast becoming my favourite, this Loei crossed with Ventricosa. That is beautiful. It seems to be really readily producing pictures. You can see that they're swelling quite well. That one looks like it might do some nice coloured pictures on that one. That one's not that great at the moment. Okay, so, oh gosh, it's absolutely throwing it down. So I've already showed you all these cyclamen in one of my latest videos. So I think what we'll do is we'll nip over to the hothouse and see what's going on over there and what new developments are happening over there. So I shall see you in a few seconds, and I'll somehow try and avoid getting absolutely soaked.